Hey, welcome back to the Blue Collar Off-Road Podcast, episode 167. I'm Graham. I'm here with Luke, Richie, and Cody, and we have Mr. Zach Savage on today. And honestly, Zach, I don't know a lot about you. You're one of Luke's
Terrible.
finds.
Imagine being a co-host and not doing any fucking research. Terrible. Bad guy. You didn't even know he had this LJ.
I was going somewhere with it, and then you just blew it out of the water. So, Zach, where are you from? I know you do some pretty interesting Ultra 4 racing car things. I'll let you talk about that because I don't know exactly what you have. I think it's a 4400 car based on your name, but we'll see.
I hail from like the mecca of desert racing, which everybody knows would be South Carolina. A lot of deserts over here. I'm in Greenville in the upstate of South Carolina. I've got a 4400 car. We just raced Hammers for the first time, and it was I said it was an adventure.
Hell yeah. Sorry, I kind of cut out there. I do apologize about that. But geez, so now is this your first official race, or were you doing some racing kind of on the East Coast to get yourself prepared for this?
No. This was the first one. I've been a rec wheeler for a long time, and it's like I want to race, so let's go to the Super Bowl of racing. Let's go to the unlimited division, and kind of see how we stack up. So I kind of feel like anything worth doing is worth overdoing, and this has sort of been a whole bunch of that. So we've just kind of overdone it.
Can we put that down as the understatement of the year?
Yeah.
So let's kind of go along the journey before we even got to the point of you racing. How did you even get into wheeling?
He's gonna cuck everybody again.
So I started wheeling. Really, I built my first rock crawler in high school, and it was like it's been a minute. I graduated in 2003, so this would have been like 2001, maybe.
All right, so there's hope it's not a Cherokee.
Yeah, it was. So it was a 1956 Willis.
Okay.
Yeah, I bought it off of one of my parents' friends for $400. And the agreement we had when I put the money in his hand was like, hey, check it out. I'll sell you this, but under no circumstances are you to tell your parents that you bought this from me. And I was like, well, that's good because I got some stipulations, and under no circumstances can you tell my parents that I bought this. So we were in agreement there. And there was a four-wheel drive club not too far away from me, and they rented out like this old like church school gymnasium. And they put duct tape squares on the floor, and like you rented a square, and that was like your job space. So I rented a square, and then I would lie to my parents and tell them I was going to spend the night at a friend's house or whatever, and then I would just haul ass down to the shop and work on this junker all hours of the night, all night long. Get up and go back to school the next morning, and that's kind of how it started. I'd gotten a car from my parents, my first car, and did like every 16-year-old moron and took it down to the power line. Was going to hit some mud holes, and I did like $4,000 worth of damage to it. So the car got parked. My parents were pissed. They're like, yeah, you're going to pay this shit off. Like, we're not paying for this. Like, you tore it up, you fix it. So I spent all summer long, about a year, I think, working, doing odd jobs, saving up money to fix the thing. And sort of somewhere in there in the middle, I was like, man, I made this money. I fixed the thing. I could probably just buy something to go beat on for about what it cost me to fix this one. And so that's sort of what I ended up doing.
Oh yeah. That's fucking wild. Awesome.
So how long did you have this Jeep before your parents figured it out? Or did you tell them? Or
yeah, so like back in the day, my parents were always down for like a Sunday drive. We'd kind of go do it as a family. And normally we would like head up to the mountains. We go to like Hendersonville, North Carolina, or Asheville, or somewhere, up that way. And
Asheville is beautiful.
Yeah,
like,
dude,
as far as the mountains around it, the city itself sucks.
Yeah, it's super hippie. You know, if you're into like patchouli and dirty barefoot hippies, it's the jam. But I still like going there and hanging out. They got a lot of like the food scene up there is awesome.
I live right off of the Ocoee. I don't need any more hippies. We call them river hippies here. They literally drive around in buses with the tubes like ratchet strapped down and smokestacks coming out of the side. It's kind of cool, but it's also kind of grody.
You got like the river rat.
Yeah.
Like river people are a whole different breed.
I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
So sorry. So what did you end up doing to this Willys? Willis.
Yeah, stretched it out, put tons under it, clapped out like probably 600,000 mile Chevy 350, turbo 350 transmission, Dana 300, put a cage in it, and leaf sprung. It was on stock. What was it? It was stock YJ leafs, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it was a beater, like real piece of shit. But it kind of got me in the game and got me hooked, and I had it until I went off to college. And at some point, I had a guy offer to trade me a Yamaha R1 for it, and I was looking at what I had invested in the Jeep versus what the Blue Book value was on the bike, and I was like, this would be dumb not to trade him. So I traded and then sold the bike and was out of the game. I guess fast forward until like 2015.
I mean, honestly, that's a smart choice because if you're a go fast guy, you probably would have ended up dead or without a license. So it's probably a good call.
Yeah, like I would have for sure died on that bike. Like no question about it. And I mean, I don't make the best decisions when I get behind the wheel or the handlebars or whatever. So like it surprises me that I knew enough at that time to know that like, yeah, I'll die on this and I can't keep it for long. So I got rid of it, thankfully.
Good choice. Always good choice. So then how did that kind of, go ahead.
So 2015 rolls around, and at that time I was shooting competitively, a lot of USPSA.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah. So I was traveling pretty much all around the country, doing, shooting guns, and shot a lot of handgun national championships. Had a really good time with that, and was really kind of starting to peak in 15, and went down to Frostproof, Florida, for the Florida Open, which I think is like the second biggest match of the year in USPSA. Usually, like Eric Graffel comes over from France. Like you pull in a lot of international talent. Like that's a really good measure. You're going to have all the heavy hitters there. So anyhow, was feeling great. Shot that match. Ended up third overall there, which was my best major match performance ever. And Sunday morning, about mid-morning, my neighbor texted me and said, "Hey, are you moving?" And I thought that was odd. And I didn't get the text until like hours after he sent it. And I responded back and I was like, "No, why?" And he was like, "Hey, sorry, none of my business." And that set off some like, I'm like, that seems kind of weird, right?
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah. So I called my dad and I'm like, "Hey, I need you to go to my house. Call me when you get there." And my old man gets there, phone rings, I answer it, and he's just breathing on the other end. And I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And he doesn't say anything. I'm like, "What's up?" And finally, I'm just like, "Hey, I'm a big boy. Like, let me have it." So he informs me that my wife had pieced out, took my kid, and empty house kind of situation. So that was a long 9-hour ride home from Florida.
Shit.
Yeah, dude. It was yeah. So hey, this is one of those like redemption stories, right? Like wheeling is it's redeeming, right? Therapeutic or whatever. So come back. I ended up selling that house and like ended up with chunk of change off of it. And I went down to Thomaston, Georgia, to another friend's surprise 30th birthday party at his 11,000 acre farm down there. And all of those cats had just bought side by sides. And they're like, dude, you should buy a side by side. And I was like, nah, I'm not really into the side by side thing. But I would get another rock crawler. And it just so happened that one of the dudes that was at this birthday party is like, oh man, I drove up through Tifton, Georgia yesterday, and there's this big badass rock crawler sitting out in front of a title loan place. And we rode around the farm all night. Definitely not shooting things at night, and drinking and carrying on. Like nothing like that happened for sure. And the next morning, everybody wakes up, and me and my buddy Austin are like the only two kind of stirring. Everybody else's faces hurt. So I'm like, hey, dude, do you want to ride down to Tifton and see if we can find this rock crawler? And, this buddy is like always down for the ride. So he's like, hell yeah, let's go. So we jump in the truck, roll down to Tifton, just riding around downtown Tifton, Georgia, which is not very big. And lo and behold, boom, there sits a TJ on 42s.
Ooh.
And there's nobody there. It's like Sunday morning. We find it. We kind of stand at the gate and look at it. I think we went through like a Bojangles or something and grabbed a biscuit. We come back by, and a guy's coming out of the title loan place. So we pull in, and we're like, hey, dude, what's the story on that TJ? And he said, well, I got a loan on it, but it's a friend of mine. If you're interested, I think he would sell it. Do you want me to call him? And I'm like, yeah, let's see what he wants, So old dude shows up at the title loan place, and he starts telling me about it. He was like, yeah, man, I traded a Razor for it. And, I've had it for a couple of months, and I just don't know that I'm like really into this and blah, blah, blah. He goes, it's got Dana 44 front. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, that's a Dana 60. And he's like, and it's got a 12 bolt rear. And I'm like, that's a 14 bolt. And, like homeboy doesn't know anything about what he's got.
That's scary. This was his entry into wheeling that he just traded a Razor for. And he's like, man, I don't know if I really like it. It's like, well, yeah, you bought a fucking land yacht. Yeah, sure.
It's on 42-inch IROC.
Well, no wonder he didn't like it.
Yeah, no wonder he didn't like it. So I'm like, hey, dude, what do you want for it? And he says, man, if you'll just pay my loan off, like, I'll get rid of it. So I'm like, okay, what's that? He's like, I don't know. You have to ask the title loan guy. So we go inside, and he comes up with a number on like what the payoff that day is. And I was like, bet. Okay. Except for we weren't planning on buying anything. I've got all this house money in my bank account. This is a total fucking impulse purchase. This is like the decisions you make when you're going through some shit. Like, you know what? This totally makes sense. Like reasonable.
Yeah.
I should buy this, right? So me and my boy Austin pull out our wallets, and I think we've got like $200 between us. And I'm like, hey man, how many debit cards do you have? And he's like, oh, I mean, I got like my work account, and I've got, this and that, whatever. And between us, we've got a couple of cards that we can get money out of. So we roll every ATM in Tifton, Georgia, pulling out the max amount, which I think was like $500.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it's like stick in a card, get 500, stick in the card, get 500, stick in the card, get 500. And we got to roll to like a couple of banks to do this. Now I'm sure they would like shut the cards off and call you and be like, hey, we've detected some fraud on your account.
Yeah, you can't do that anymore. I've tried.
Yeah. But in 15, turns out they would let you, hit 7 ATMs within like 45 minutes of each other and pull out the max amount of cash. So we go back.
You got no phone call whatsoever from the bank?
No, this is 2015.
That's insane, dude.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Maybe because it was like a Sunday. Maybe people just weren't paying attention. I don't know.
That's
but
crazy.
yeah,
Banks don't work on Sundays. That's true.
Yeah. So we go back. I buy the thing. The guy gives me the title, the whole nine. And I'm thinking, man, this is going to be a long ass ride home on like unbalanced, pretty shitty 42-inch IROCs. And the guy's like, hey, I don't know if y'all are interested, but I got a gooseneck trailer at my house I'm trying to sell. And
oh my God, it's getting worse.
yeah, I'm like, well, I'm not, but my buddy Austin's like, hell yeah, man, what you got? So we have to go back to the ATMs and get more money out. We go to Homeboy's house and Austin buys this trailer. So we end up, like on a whim driving down here, and we go home with Jeep and trailer. And that's kind of how I got back into wheeling. So got home, took the TJ to like our local park, Gulches, and realized in about 7 minutes off the trailer, this thing was just like jacked up bad. Like the shocks were trash, the suspension geometry was trash. There was like some good parts there, but it was very poorly done. So kind of the next couple of years was just fixing it, getting it right, making it better. Ended up back halfing it, front halfing it, redoing the 4 links front and rear, putting it on coilovers, LS 700R4, Atlas, all like just your basic normal run of the mill, mostly stock TJ.
Mm-hmm. Very stock, very stock.
Yeah. got rid of the IROCs.
Ooh, what'd you go with?
Well, funny enough, she was just my girlfriend at the time, and I think she was fishing for a diamond, just on a whim, surprise, before we went out to Moab, present 42-inch trips.
Huh?
Okay.
And
She's still single?
That's when I knew, like, this girl's wife material. Like, I'm gonna wife her up.
Oh, so she's not single anymore, is what you're saying?
No. She's I've locked her down. She's
good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
I did the whole kid thing. I got the old Keepa lady baby. Since we can't say, some stuff. But yeah. So like ended up putting it on the trips, and those tires were great. I loved them. They hooked up everywhere we went. Immediately put them on, and when we went to Utah and wheeled the crap out of it. So
that's fucking awesome. So what's up with you and like finishing something and then you're like, throw it to the fucking wolves. Let's go big and like to the fucking balls of the walls. You're saying you finished this thing and then you went straight to Moab?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I have a problem with that. Like, all my friends hate it because it's like, all right, let's get a trip together. Like, in 6 months, we're going to go wherever, or 3 months or 2 weeks, or it doesn't matter. And like generally about Monday of the week that we're going to leave, I'm like, you know what I should do is motor swap this thing. And then I end up spending like 20 hours a day for a week working on it. I'm working on it on the trailer as we're pulling out of town. And then like when we get there, I got to do some stuff and whatever. I don't know why, but I always end up doing like major projects before we go anywhere.
Yeah, we don't know anyone like that at all.
Have you?
No,
that's how you.
That's everyone in here.
Okay,
that's how you get your. That's how you work on your shit. I don't know. That's just. That's like the same for a bunch of us. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I just feel like it gets with the deadline in place. Regardless of whether you're doing, a major motor swap or whatever it may be, you have a deadline, and you'll make that deadline one way or another.
Every time, yeah. Like we got to go wheel. I mean, you can't not make it.
Yeah, you've already got so much. Maybe not invested in the trip yet, but you're expecting to go on this. You have people you're talking to. You're going on this trip. You're planning stuff for it. You're going. Now you just need to make sure everything is set, and the motivation just comes naturally.
Yeah, we went on. They called it the More Ultimate TJ Adventure Challenge. A guy out in Oklahoma, Casey Mills, was like, I'm going to invite what he thought, I guess, was like the most badass TJs in the country. And I don't even think really, he didn't invite me directly. He invited my buddy Zach Curley, whose TJ I did a lot of work on. And then Curley was like, oh, well, if I'm coming, like Savage has got to come. And I sort of think that's how I ended up on this trip. But on that one, I was like, hey, listen, everybody, I'm not going to do anything. And they're like, yeah, right. I was like, no, seriously, I'm not. No major projects. Like I'm gonna top off fluids. I might give it a quick nut and bolt, and then that's it. I'm no major projects. And my friend group's like, yeah, we'll believe that when we see it. So the day that I was going to drive it from my house up to my shop to top the fluids off, I get like halfway, and it's like a 12-minute drive, and the thing overheats, and I'm like, shit. So we get it to the shop. I realize my fans aren't running. I said, well, okay, no big deal. Summit, order some fans. I'll be here tomorrow. I do that. I just thought the fans died. That doesn't fix it. Like the problem gets worse. So I end up with like an electrical gremlin. So lo and behold, I'm like rewiring this thing the day that we're leaving. And they're like, yeah, bullshit. You're not going to do anything. You always have to do something. And I was like, yeah, but it wasn't my choice this time. Like I didn't pick this. So I bought like a entire Edelbrock like Pro Flow 4 kit that I put in the trailer and just hauled to Oklahoma with me. And I'm like, if this Bobo jackwagon bullshit that I just did doesn't work, we'll just put a whole new harness and computer and everything in it, like on the trail, in the parking lot. Because that's when you should wire a vehicle for sure.
Yeah.
Well, wiring is one of those things you can do anywhere. So
definitely. Definitely.
Jeez. How was that trip? How'd it do?
Dude, that trip is awesome. If y'all haven't been to Rugged Mountain Ranch, I highly recommend it. I didn't know
we've never even heard of that place.
Oh my god,
I've heard of it. I've heard of it. Never been there,
Mountain
obviously.
Ranch is badass. They've got
what state?
So what?
What state?
Oklahoma.
Okay. Oh yeah.
That's a little haul.
Oklahoma had rocks. Like when people were like, "Hey, we're gonna take a trip to Wheeling, Oklahoma," I was like, "Why?" Like I thought there was just like cows and cornfields, and they're like, "No, there's rocks." And then we got there, and that place is super cool. The dude that kind of figured it out, his name's Roland, and he's a badass. But apparently he had like his crawler on his trailer in a grocery store parking lot, and this lady just comes up to him and is like, hey, where do you take that thing? I've got a big farm. Like, you should come check it out. And he went and checked it out, and it was awesome. And they turned it into an off-road park.
Wow.
But, like, when you're riding Tackett Creek, it's, like, huge water holes and just massive ledges. And you would think, I mean, like, if y'all wheel in the South, if you go to Harlan and, like, there was rain in the forecast 6 months ago, it's a mud hole and you're like bumping at everything and banging rev limiter to get up, all of the stuff. Right. Yeah. And, I'm like, okay.
The old AOP experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's like back up and bump it, like hit it with your purse. Like you got to want it. Right. Mm-hmm. And, we get out there and I'm like, okay, my tire is in a water hole that's consuming a 42. And then I got to climb a vertical ledge, that's 8 feet tall. And you're thinking, there's no way that's going to hook. It hooked right up. Like the traction, everything was wet and the traction was still pretty unbelievable. But like super hard technical wheeling, very cool place. I'd like to go back out there sometime whenever I can kind of get it in the schedule because we had a blast. And some of our friends, Chuck and Mason Converse, they do some YouTube stuff. They came out. Chuck's TJ was broke, so they just like filmed it and ended up putting like a YouTube video up on it. But yeah, like super cool place. I would definitely recommend checking it out if you get the opportunity.
It's funny you bring that up.
It looks
because
gorgeous.
I have seen that Chuck Converse video,
Yeah.
and it's really funny to like put two and two together because I was creeping through your Instagram page while you're telling the story to like kind of put everything together, and I'm like, I've seen this fucking rig, and then you say Chuck Converse, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's that rig. Wow, okay, everything connects here. That's wild.
It's crazy how small of a world it really is, and especially how small like the wheeling world is. Like everybody kind of knows everybody, even if you don't know that you know. Kind of the old joke, like you're like, hey, do you know Bill? And you're like, no, I don't know Bill. And you're like, yeah, the dude. He's like got like a '97 TJ. It's black. It's whatever. You're like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the LS3. You're like, yeah, and he just put in gears. And you're like, yes, that dude.
The ranch looks gorgeous though, and they have a fucking swimming pool.
So the house up there, homeboy was a prepper, and he apparently died a long time ago, and I think it's been sold. But there's like an underground doomsday bunker in it, and yeah, like it's like air purification. Like the house runs like positive pressure, so that if there was like nuclear fallout, you could like live in the house and not die or whatever. He had like underground tunnels that went out that nobody even knew about until they had some equipment out there to do some work, and they dropped like a bulldozer through dude's tunnel. Like the weight of the bulldozer couldn't handle it; it just drops in.
That's
like giving my housing plans away.
Yeah. Yes. So, you can go out there and stay in dude's bunker though. Like, it's available to, it's like a housing option. They've got, I think, some camping down low, but you can go up to that house and stay in it.
That's fucking wild.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Really. I mean, like they've got the bunker, and then they've got like another sort of like bunkhouse type thing beside it. We ended up staying in the bunkhouse thing beside it, but we went in and checked out the bunker. He has like a vault that was, all his gun room and stuff. And the story I heard was that it was all flooded out. And when they finally went down in there and got in the vault, it was like Barrett 50s and all this ammunition. And I mean, like homeboy had an arsenal, and it was in like 3 feet of water, and stuff was just rusted out. Like it kind of made my heart hurt when I heard it. But yeah, a dude was ready. Like he was straight up ready to go.
So, on the note, I've been meaning to say this since a little while ago, but on March 30th, I am signed up for a PCS match, so it's kind of cool to hear that we're also talking to another gun nerd.
Man.
So that's exciting. I got to pick your brain at some point about that stuff. Not going to do it on air because, I don't think that the listeners to an off-road thing are going to be too crazy about that, but whatever.
You'd be surprised how much overlap there is between like guns and off-road people.
I'm not at all surprised. It's quite funny. But
Yeah.
So sorry. So you went out to tack it. Do you still have your TJ?
No. So that's a whole nother story. So the problem with working on crap is like all my friends convinced me that it's a good idea for me to work on their crap. And
that happens.
And every single time it happens, I'm like, I will never do this again. And then the next time somebody wants to do something, I don't know.
It happens a week later.
Yeah, I'm like such an idiot. I'm like, yeah, that does sound cool. That'd be fun.
It's very relatable. Yes.
Yeah. So we're working on a friend of ours wanted to do and like mission creep, right? Like we were just gonna do body mounts on a 47 CJ2A. It was like his grandfather's. It was a 46. He bought it new in Arizona. Like this thing only its whole life, all it did was carry a little boat from the house to the river, so like grandpa could fish. And anyways, our buddy in South Carolina ended up with it. It had some rot and all, and he's like, I just want to fix it up just so it's kind of drivable, whatever. And that turned into like a full frame off restoration. And the thing ended up super nice. But it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Me and my buddy Croft are in here working on it. And I do all this in the back corner of my cabinet shop. So by day, I do commercial and residential cabinetry. And just in the back corner of my building, I've got my Torchmate plasma table, and I got a 2-post lift, and my bender, and my hand plasma, and like all of sort of my play tools. So we're back here working, and Croft's sitting on my table saw, and I'm wiring something up, and he's just scrolling his phone. And he's like, "Hey man, there's a kid on Facebook looking for a built TJ like yours." And I was like, "Cool." And he's like, "It seems like he's got a pretty healthy budget." I was like, "Yeah, cool." And he goes, "I'm gonna post a picture of your shit." I said, "Whatever." So like 6:30 in the morning, I wake up and I've got like 80 text messages from this kid. He had responded to Croft. Croft had given him my phone number, and he had like a million questions about the TJ. And it wasn't even on my radar to get rid of it. Like I had zero plans to sell it. And basically he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So this guy flew from Utah. His dad flew from Florida. I picked them up at the GSP airport, drove them to my shop. We walked in. They looked at it for like 30 seconds, and the dad was like, "How you want me to make this checkout?" I was like, do you want to like drive it?" He's like, "No, I don't think so." Like, do you like? How about do you want to start it? You want to hear it run? And he was like, "I mean, I don't know if you want to." So like I crank it up, and we're standing there talking and like looking around at it. And apparently, the son's got a 1-ton rig in Utah, and the dad has like a pretty basic JK on like 35s. And dad couldn't keep up with the son and the son's friend group. So after their last wheeling trip, he was like, "Find me something I can keep up with y'all in." So homeboy writes me a check, and he's like, "Hey man, whenever it clears and you're satisfied, let us know, and we'll have a transporter pick it up and haul it out to Utah." So like I went from zero intentions of getting rid of my crawler to like 5 days later, it's on a trailer headed out west. And I was like, well, I always wanted to build a race car. I've always wanted to race, and like this is the catalyst. This is, like here we go. And that kind of started the race car journey.
So what did you go with for a chassis? Did you build it all yourself, or?
No. So what I did, I'm like into Bentech. Like I've built a bunch of cages. I've had a chassis drawn for a long, long time that I wanted to build. And I was like, man, I don't, like based off of all of the rigs I've built to this point, I mess around with the 4-link calculator, and, I like, every car we've done has been a little bit different. Like I've, at this point I've done, a handful of crawlers and stuff. And it's like, all right, well, this one is good at this, but it kind of sucks at that. So I'm going to change like the anti-squat or, like whatever. I'm going to like massage it around and then see how that is different. And progressively they've all gotten better. And then we've gone back and redone some stuff on them and stuff. But I'm looking at a race car and I'm like, man, I kind of want to buy somebody's geometry. Like, I don't know that I want to put this much energy and effort into just what I think, based off of crawlers on something that, I intend to go 130 miles an hour across the desert in. So I got with Lee Ravenel from Partially Committed, and he told me the whole time, like, you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And I was like, no, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. And he kept telling me like, you're like, he tried to talk me out of it, and I didn't listen. So I bought his chassis, and I got it to the shop, put it on the chassis table, got to looking at it, started figuring out what I really needed for up travel in the rear. And I was like, man, I can't get it. So I ended up cutting it off from the B-pillar back, and redoing it all back there. And then when I started laying out the front, I'd really been toying with the idea of a leading arm car. I don't know if y'all have seen that 4800 car that Cade Rod built, like Jimmy's off road, the Jimmy's, not Jimmy's in Kentucky or whatever, but like Jimmy's in out west. His son, Randy Rod's son, Cade, he built a 4800 leading arm car that was sick. Like the thing hung with 4400s on a single shock in a couple of races. Like he was racing in a single shock 4800 car in 4400 and was like podium, and like,
wow,
it was killer. So the more I looked at that, I'm thinking, man, okay, I can't afford an IFS car and really don't want an IFS car because I'm going to primarily wreck wheel this thing. It's just going to be like a part-time race car.
How things have changed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, seems things have changed a little bit.
Yeah. So the best laid plans, right? So anyhow, I'm like, I don't understand IFS. I'm too dumb to do the math on IFS. Like, where would you even start with that? Like, no desire to do that at all. Like, I'm a East Coast solid axle guy, right? But I'm looking at like, well, but how could you still be competitive with a solid axle car? And obviously, like the Miller Motorsports chassis are super competitive. The Bombers chassis somehow. That car hasn't changed in forever, but like it's still like just rips. So I'm like looking at it and I'm like, man, if you do a leading arm car, I can get as much or more travel out of the front as most of these chicken wing cars, right? But I'm still on a solid axle and it kind of bridges the gap. So I'm like, man, you'd still be as fast in the rocks as a solid axle. And then you're going to be somewhere in between a traditional shock on axle car and an IFS car in the desert. So I'm like, the IFS guys are just going to be just a hair faster than me, but then, I should still smoke them in the rocks. And get 50 degrees of steering where they're steering like 35 degrees and all that. And, it made sense to me. I'm like, I can wrap my head around that math. So that's what I set out to do. And as I start trying to package it, I realize I'm going to have to cut this chassis from the A-pillar forward and redo the whole front end. So I joke around that it's like, I don't know, at this point, it's maybe 50% a PCR chassis and 50% a me chassis, or maybe 66-33. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the percentages are, but we, at this point, we share ownership of what kind of chassis it is, I think.
That's fucking awesome. I mean, the car looks absolutely sick, and it sounds like it did amazing. So I don't think you did any wrong, no matter which way you cut that cat.
Well, thank you.
Skin the cat, pardon me.
I was lucky. I don't know if y'all know Cole Mackey, RCM Fab. He builds a thick crawler. And I started out trying to buy his. Cole was on that rugged mountain trip with us, and his cars side hill better than anything I've ever wheeled with. They're nasty. So I was able to sweet talk him into coming up a couple of days and going over all my math with me and, looking at stuff, and we mocked some things up, and, he made sure I didn't do anything stupid from a suspension geometry standpoint. And then I was in the rookie program, and that opened the door to really meeting, some straight up badasses in the Ultra 4 world, including Wayne from Alltech Motorsports, who's, regarded as like one of the premier shock tuners in the country. And we hit it off, and Wayne was like, yeah, I'll help you out. And the whole build, I would send him, like pages and pages of handwritten math problems. And he would fire back and be like, how did you get this number? And I'd tell him, and he'd be like, okay, that's the right number. You're getting there a little bit different than I normally get there, but like, yeah, that'll work. And then, it's like, hey, you need to shoot for this motion ratio. We want this shock shaft frequency. He kind of like gave me these parameters that I needed to hit. So then I just sort of like backed my way into the math, if that makes any sense.
It does. There's a lot going on, and I'm trying to keep up. But
Sorry.
no, that's the good shit. So when you're talking about the frequency on the shaft for the shock tuning, is that literally just like when you are running through the desert, the speed at which it is basically like oscillating?
Yes. And there are frequencies that are basically tunable and like they behave predictably. And if you get inside that range, these guys that are, and I'll be honest with you, I think shock tuning is straight up witchcraft. Like
Yeah.
that falls into like how automatic transmissions work. Like, I don't know, you like
Hopes
throw
and
some
dreams
magic
go
stuff. Yeah,
in.
dude. Yeah, I have no idea how that works.
So, I know you're saying you don't have any clue how that works, but what causes untunable frequencies? Because you'd have
I
a
think
better idea than I would.
so. I think that the further towards the chassis you're mounting the shocks, um, like the frequency's changing, and you have to get into such heavy spring rates to support the weight that it becomes like less predictable. So
Okay,
there's
okay.
a sweet spot in there with the motion ratio where like if you land in that sweet spot, uh, you don't have to worry about having so stiff a spring that it's like fighting the motion of the axle, and then you have so like light a spring that you've got cool bond or whatever. So like there's a area there that you're a target that you're trying to hit. That's like the happy medium.
All right,
Where you, yeah.
that kind of makes sense. So now
Okay.
on like without throwing too much of your competition info out there, are you running the shocks like angled in a little at the top to help cheat that, or are you trying to run them straight up vertical?
So basically straight up vertical at full bump.
Okay. Okay.
Oh. Mhm.
Yeah. You can be, according to Wayne, you can be plus or minus 10 degrees.
Oh
But
man.
ideally, you're at 90 at bump, which I am at 90 at bump in the rear, and I think I'm at like 2.8 degrees in the front.
That's pretty damn
So
good.
I got as close as I could get. Like it's the one thing, if you ever get to look at any Ultra 4 car, especially the 4400s, like you start building a chassis and you're like, hell yeah, man, this thing's roomy as shit. And then you start putting stuff on it and you're like, there is no room in this thing at all. Like, where in the hell am I supposed to put anything? So like packaging is a nightmare. And I did not realize how bad it would be until really, I mean, it was like, this kind of sucks. And it was like, man, this sucks a lot. And it's like, holy shit, this is terrible. And it just kind of got worse and worse and worse the more stuff we put on the car.
Mhm.
But I like it kind of sort of sometimes like the packaging dictates where things are going to go. And, every rock crawler is a compromise, right? Like everything's a
Yeah.
compromise. You're just trying to do like the lesser of two evils everywhere and hope that when you get done, you've won more than you've lost and the thing works.
So like I'm listening to all of this and I did the 4 link on the back of the Cherokee. It's nowhere like I'm realizing that I built it fairly well, but it's not like at any high level. And I ended up hitting a point where I had to kick the lower mounts out as far as I could towards the edge of the wheel mount surface in order to get clearance for the frame rail without going excessively into the cabin area. And so like at bump I'm sitting somewhere around, I want to say like 20 degrees of angle on the shocks.
Okay.
And just it's weird to hear the differences with the race car shit.
Yeah. Well,
But-
but see, it depends on what you're doing with it. Like right on a crawler, if you're going to go to like Windrock or Harlan or something, and you don't have any intentions of going 100 miles an hour, like it maybe doesn't matter. Like if it works good in the rocks, right? Like rock and roll Teddy.
It's honestly fine up to about 70, and then I run out of nuts because, yeah.
Dude, I didn't realize how big of a limiting factor nuts was going to be.
It's quite limiting. Poor Cody here was riding with me at Roush Creek, and we were coming out of the trail system. We were in high range third gear, banging limiter on the way back, trying to get back to camp before they shut the gates. And there was a couple of moments where we were both questioning things.
Yeah. Well,
But
I got to ride the first year. So I did the rookie thing twice. I didn't finish the car the year before last. So Dave Cole was nice enough to let me do it again. And the first year we were out there, I got in the car in a 4800 car with Matt Bradley, and he's got some of those Phil Licardi long shocks. It's like they put a coilover and a bypass together, like end on end.
Yep.
Timothy Clark runs those, and those things are fucking massive.
They're insane. They're like as tall as I am. And he just put like they're either 4.0 or 4.5 Kings on the back of it. They're the only set in existence. And I mean, these things are retarded big, but I'm telling you, they're like 6 feet long. And that car is stupid fast. And it's kind of funny because we get in there and they had just done like 2 hours on safety, and they're like explaining to us how the harnesses should fit, head and neck restraint stuff, like how the seat needs to fit you, all these angles and stuff, like super technical safety things. And everybody's like throwing out these stories of like, how so-and-so broke their back and then whoever burned up in a car. And, it was just like, here's the horrors of racing. And then they're like, hey, we're going to take a little ride up to Fissure Mountain. Just a nice little cruise. We're going to go show y'all where Remote Pit 2 is. We're going to go up there. We're going to watch the sunset. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So we're going to leave. And, I just met this guy, and Matt's super cool. He helped me out a lot this year at Hammers. But, he had an empty seat. I'm like, hey, man, can I jump in with you? And he's like, yeah, no problem. So I climb in, and I'm like, hey, where's my crotch strap? And he's like, oh, I hadn't had a chance to put that in yet. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm like putting the shoulders on, and I'm like, I think these are too low for me. And then I'm in a borrowed helmet that's too small, and I don't have on a Hans. And I'm like, it doesn't matter though. We're just taking a leisurely sunset cruise. So we get in the car and we go about 20 feet, and then Matt just starts banging rev limiter, stepping off out of Boone Road, like hitting 4-foot whoops at 70 miles an hour. And I was like, this is how I die. Like right here, this is gonna be it. We're gonna wad this car up. These belts don't fit me. Like the shit was kind of scary. Like straight up, I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And I think it was just all of the the horror stories, I guess, that they had just got done telling us. But I came back and I was like, this shit's no joke. Like it's for real. Like, you really got to want to be in that car because it is violent. It's a lot more violent than I ever imagined it would be. And then like it's gotten easier every time. And then there's also sort of this factor of like when you're not in control. Like when you're behind the wheel, I don't know if like y'all have ever ridden like the back of a motorcycle or whatever, but like for me, if I'm driving it, I'll drive the shit out of it and have a blast. But like when I'm riding and I have zero control over what happens, I don't love that so much.
Really? You're even saying as a passenger, you like not being in control?
No. As a passenger, I don't like it because I have no control. You're just over there. You're along for the ride. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like I say, it's a lot more violent than I thought it was going to be. And it's gotten a lot better every time that I've done it. But I came home from that first rookie ranch experience, like, holy shit, like this is wild. And kind of had that like, I need to look myself in the mirror and decide if this is really something I want to do. And it took me like 5 seconds to be like, yeah, hell yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, this past rookie ranch, I got to ride with Chuck Crossland in his 4800 car, which is also a Liberty Mountain chassis, Phil Licardi, long shot car. and Chuck doesn't know anything but rev limiter. Like Chuck has 2 speeds on and off, and same deal. It was like, yeah, we're just gonna kind of go cruise around, and Chuck's like hell we are. We're gonna go just rip this thing off the rails. And then after riding around with Chuck for a couple of days and kind of getting acclimated, I ended up getting in the car with another rookie, AK Watley, who's got a Bronco that's the twin to Von Gittin Jr.'s Bronco.
But does he shoot AKs?
Hey, he's a military vet. I bet he shoots a little bit of everything, if I had to guess.
I mean, with a name like that, though, he's got to shoot AKs.
Dude, he needs like a drug cartel like gold plated AK with some engraving and stuff in it. Like if I was him, like that's how I would show up to the range every time.
I mean, that's just a vibe. Get the whole Sicario thing going.
For sure.
Sorry,
For sure.
didn't mean to distract too far.
No.
That was just too good of an opportunity to pass up, especially as an AK guy.
Oh, are you an AK guy? That's
Yeah,
why we were talking about rubles earlier or whatever.
No,
it gets brought up routinely.
We're talking about the exchange rate of Russian currency.
What's the exchange rate of an AK?
Relatively
Now I get it.
reasonable.
Now I get it.
Yes.
But yeah, getting in that car, that's the first time I jumped in an IFS car, and you know those cars are like next level spaceships, right? And we get in, and he starts ripping. And as you're going down Boone Road, there's all of these like not washes, but like all of these like roads off to the side of Boone Road that are like, 3 and 4 foot whoops. There are various, degrees of rutted out, and we're just scooting like 80 miles across them. Well, then you get to the wash. And if you're on the gravel road, there's a bridge that goes over it. Or, if you want to, party, you stay stepped out and you ride, the whooped out road across the wash. And we're coming up to that thing, and I'm like, all right, he's going to start slowing down. He's going to start slowing down. Oh my God, like he's not going to slow down. And
he just grabs another gear and away
you
go.
Oh my God. Like he never touched brakes. We ripped the wash at like 83 miles an hour. And I was thinking like, I'm going to tell my chiropractor about this next week for sure. Like, there's definitely going to be a conversation because I'm about to feel this in my spine, and felt nothing. Like it was like right on a cloud of titties. We just zipped right through it. And, I was thinking,
you know what? That's making it into the show description.
So I was super impressed, with that car, and that was kind of an eye-opening experience that like, okay, if you're tuned right and you're really dialed in, like what these cars will do is insane.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think it's really unique to go from like something like Luke's rig when I was in the passenger seat to then seeing even just video alone and trying to like comprehend the difference. It's mind blowing. Like the ability that some of these rigs have, whether it be IFS or solid axle front, is it's fucking nuts.
For sure.
Like I'm just gonna throw out there, my rig boogies as far as like a normal trail rig. That thing, it rides fairly well.
It looks like it should not go as fast as it can. It's not like I don't know. An Ultra 4 car looks like it should be fast. Yours doesn't look like it should be fast, but it handles it pretty good.
But see, that's kind of how we started out wanting to go fast to begin with. So, I don't know how often y'all get to go wheel, but I don't get to go wheel enough, right? Like a handful of weekends a year if I'm lucky. So if you go to like Windrock or Harlan or AOP or wherever, and you've got like a weekend to run a park, if you want to hit all of the big obstacles, you got to be shitting and getting between them. You know what I mean? Like you can't go ride 5 miles an hour up the dirt road and see anything at one of those parks. So
that's one of the weirdest things. And like, I'll say that as far as a group goes, Graham and myself probably get out 7, 8, 12 times a year.
Okay.
That's
somewhere in there.
Pretty quick.
Yeah.
It
depends on the year.
much more back in the day. Oh my God. It's kind of crazy too that now and we talked about this before with like drifting and stuff. Is like once you get to a certain point, the amount of seat time that you actually get to be in the rig is just so much smaller. Because you're planning bigger trips, so you don't want to go to the small local park and beat the shit out of it before you go to like cross country. And it's just it's kind of crazy, but it's also almost more exciting because you're not stuck seeing the same shit every single time you go wheeling, which is kind of nice.
Definitely. Yeah.
But it's definitely it's crazy to think like shit back in 2018, 2019, how much we were out fucking wheeling, and then now it's like granted again, I haven't wheeled in fucking forever because I'm a piece of shit. But I will say in general, everybody par for the course that we haven't been out.
2020 was the wildest season.
That
we
was.
were 2019 and 2020, we were out every other weekend. And the in-between weekend was spent on like ripping motors and stuff out and swapping them. I think it was Kish, Cody, and myself put a 4.0 in my Jeep in 8.5 hours from pulling into the shop to driving it to Massachusetts and back to Connecticut as a test drive.
Correct.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean it's just crazy. It's crazy to think about. See, we should just I don't know. It's and then now we have Graham who's on stickies that are balder than shit. Well, they're not that bald. Let's be fair. I guess Sean
work.
They do, but not for road use. And that's the thing that I was kind of getting at is like he used to drive that thing around.
Listen,
and now it's just
I'm going
it's
to
as much as mine does now. That's crazy.
I have 3 razors. I'm going to retrieve my 4th one and get 3 other ones, so I'll have plenty to go around and swap the stickies on and off. I just need to get another set of rims.
I was gonna say we swap at the beadlocks every time. You gonna need a lot more beer and pizza, brother.
And it's also sorry. Go ahead.
No, you got it.
It's funny that this year's goal, now that I've fallen in with Logan, Bryce, other Logan, and all of them in this area, dude, my goal is like just duct tape and baling wire my piece of shit back together and get out to those local parks as much as I can. But I guess like I'm kind of cheating because I'm in the middle of Harlan, Windrock, and AOP. So my local parks aren't any complaining, or there's no complaining about them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Harlan's like 3 hours for me. I think Windrock is like 4 hours, and AOP is like 4.5, something like that. So
How
that's
far are you from Roush?
I have never been to Roush, so I don't really know. Yeah.
If you would like to come on up, we are going to be having a ride there on Labor Day weekend.
That would be awesome. I'm super bummed that they're not doing the Ultra 4 race at Roush this year. I like before the Ultra 4 season, and I'm like trying to circle the calendar on races that I think I'm going to hit. That one was like for sure, definitely will be there, and then it's not happening this year. I'm like, well, damn, that sucks.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Why isn't it happening? Any idea?
There was some drama earlier this year with like Dave sold Ultra 4, I guess it was like Ultra 4 USA. He kept King of the Hammers and sold the rest of the series to the people that own Mid-America Outdoors.
Oh, this whole thing. Yep.
Yeah, and then I don't know, like the Mid-America Outdoors people like weren't gonna put on the series this year or something, and there was a whole bunch of back and forth, and Dave's like, I'm taking it back. And so I think it's a little bit more of an abbreviated race schedule this year than there has been in years past. But yeah, it's not on there, which blows. And then what really sucks, they raced at AOP for a decade. And then like as soon as I get in the game, they're like, no, we're not gonna go to AOP again. Like, well, what the shit, Like that was gonna be real close to the house.
Mm.
So, and I love AOP and I love those trails, and like I've got, that's some territory that I know. Like I'm like, I hope they race up, Little Caesars and Cream Pie. Like I can hit that shit.
That'd be a hell of a thing to race up.
Dude, that would be nuts.
Yeah.
I can't imagine like a bunch of 1,000 horsepower cars just ripping up Cream Pie. Like that would be, it'd be fun to watch, but the carnage would be insane.
I was gonna say, talk about the pile up too, just people waiting to go for their try on it. That'd be nuts.
Oh, and they just be driving over each other. It's like if you're on the race course, like your traction, like I'll just drive over you. Like people just be driving over everybody. It would be a hell of a show. I don't know if the race would be worth the damn or not, but like the live stream would be pretty cool.
Oh, that would be exciting for sure. But yeah, so we do host a little ride. Like we go there and invite people to come and hang out with us for the weekend. And it's Labor Day weekend or Memorial Day, whatever days in September. First weekend of September, and it's a damn good time. Should definitely come out and awesome. Hang out and whatnot.
I would love to.
If you're looking for an excuse,
you don't have to twist my arm super hard.
So
go ahead.
So while we're on the note of Ultra 4, Richie and myself's introduction to Ultra 4 was actually at Roush.
Okay.
We were just up there for a event with a club called SIS Off-Road, and they don't exist anymore. But a fucking Miller car just comes ripping up the road and pulls in, goes and pays, and then like heads out to the trails just bombing out, and like we're sitting there looking at the thing while they're paying, and we're like, yo, that's fucking cool. And then we go back and talk to some of the guys, and they're like, oh yeah, that's the Millers, they race Ultra 4, and away we went. And we were like, fuck, what, 18 at the time, 19 at the time?
Yeah, I was 18, you were 19.
Never seen anything like that before, and then all of a sudden this dude just drives a race car up the road into the park.
I love those cars. My dream actually was to have a Miller chassis, and man, I tried to hit them up. I think the Blylers are building those chassis now, maybe for Eric. And I tried to hit up the website. I tried to hit him up on Instagram. I tried to hit up the Blylers. John Grounds is a guy that's racing one of those from out west. And I had talked to him a pretty good bit, and I was like, man, I tried to get, like, they would not hit me back. And I was like, man, I just want y'all to take my money. I love your race car. But I never could get anybody to get up with me. So, I ended up going a completely different direction on building my car. But dude, I love those Miller cars. I think they work phenomenal.
They're just so fucking sexy.
Yeah. And like, it's an East Coast guy. It's a solid axle car. That's like the core of what I think rock racing really is supposed to be. Like, if you're a purist, right? Like, that's kind of the bread and butter of a pure rock racer. He's kind of the gold standard. In my opinion.
Have you ever seen any like the heavy metal concepts videos on them?
Oh, dude, are you serious? Like, when I'm having a bad day, like that's what I use to pick myself up. I probably watched those heavy metal concepts videos like a million times, and yeah, they're killer.
That's who we were at Roush with.
Yep.
Okay, I got to meet that guy this year at Hammers. I ended up sharing a garage with AK, and I guess he was doing one of his heavy metal concepts videos for the Fun Haver guys, and he came over to the tent and ended up, he wasn't there for me. He was like looking at the Bronco, and they were talking about their shoot and all that kind of stuff. But I got to meet that guy. Super cool dude.
Will is an awesome dude.
I was like, hey man, this is your fucking fault. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm in $100,000 worth of debt because of you. Thanks a lot, asshole.
Yeah.
So
he
my kids will never go to college because of you. All right. Thanks a lot for putting those videos out.
So he was part of that original group, and like he used to do all of that group's photography and whatnot that I was talking about earlier. Yeah. And so that's how we met him. And one of the coolest videos that I have found is on SIS Off-Road YouTube. And it's like the Harry's Run at the Crawl Daddy Challenge. So he took all of the equipment that he was using for the 4400 cars. Now, granted, this is going back to 2015 or 16 here, but he took a video of they had a silly race that was going up Crawl Daddy, and like that video just constantly plays in the back of my mind as a like, yeah, you got to go actually work on stuff because you watch this in person, and like we got to hit that level of photography at some point.
It's unreal. I mean, like he's got cinematic masterpieces, right? And like they're inspiring. You know, I don't want to say that they get me hard, but they
Definitely a little bit of a chubby.
they might, you know. I wouldn't.
Were you just shit talking my photos? Did I just hear that right? I think you don't like my photos.
No,
That's fucked up.
It's
don't
not.
think that it was
It's not.
that. It was.
They weren't good enough.
Are you saying I'm not doing social media well? Damn.
No, I'm the jackass that does the social media. I'm the one that's fucking that up. So, like, I'll take the blame there. What I'm saying is that
That's
like,
not to say you're still not fucking the photos up, Cody.
God dang it, man! I tried my best. All right.
no, he brought out like legit camera gear, and they were like, it's a well put together for the time. I think in 2016 1080 was like the shit. So
Oh, okay. I gotcha. I mean, shit. If somebody wants to, sponsor the podcast, get us some money, we can get a nice camera. I'll take the video. I got you.
yeah,
just gotta,
we definitely got to get on that at some point. But that's a little bit down the road. I'd say.
We can, next year.
Definitely for next year.
My buddy that helped me accidentally sell my TJ, he works at a marketing company, and whenever they ended up, so like I was going to build the race car before the whole rookie program thing came out, and my intentions were to build a 4800 car, and like COVID.
How the hell do you trip and fall into 4400?
Dude, like it's a wild story, right? Like, so I was gonna build a 4800 car. That was the intention. I started out like I accidentally sold the crawler. I'm trying to like order shocks, and I had basically been told for 3.0 internal bypasses, king or nothing. And I said okay, and I started trying to get some, and I was like COVID supply chain bullshit. They're like 16 months. And I'm like, well, but I want to race next year. And they're like, well, sorry, like, it's going to be like maybe 14 months, but like 14, 16, it's going to be a while to get some shocks. And I didn't want to do that. Well, then they announced the rookie program, and when it first came out, they were going to pick one person that was racing 4400 only, and they were going to like follow their journey to the hammers. Like they were going to send a film crew like to your shop. It was going to document, you building the car, like you getting out there, like all of the stuff that goes along with that. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I don't want to wait 16 months for shocks. I'm looking at like, well, I can get you a 5.2 bypass and a carrier in like 4 to 6 weeks. I'm like, okay, well, that sounds pretty good. And this rookie program is just 4,400. I'm like, shit, why not? Like, I'll do it. Like, let's order some shocks. So that's kind of how it all started. It was like basically on shock availability and the fact that the rookie thing was going to be one person 4,400 only. And I ordered the shocks, and there was like a interview process for it. And, I kind of gone through some of the rounds and all that. And they're like, hey, get on at this day and this time. And I'm thinking like, this is going to be it. This is going to be like when they're going to tell me like I'm the guy. Right. And I get on the Skype call and I'm like, why is there 27 other people on this thing? And I'm thinking, I'm like, well, maybe they just got like a bunch of like crew or something, like it's whatever. And then they sort of announced that it was going to be for all classes, and that they couldn't pick one person, and they were going to let the like all 27 people in. And I was like, shit! I just ordered like $14,000 worth of shocks off of this whole 4,400 thing, and I could have just could have got some 3.0 internal bypasses and raced 4,800. But at this point, like, I was kind of already sold out, and I was like, I'm going this route no matter what. And that program ended up being like super cool. I learned like a metric ton. It was just total insanity. Um, and I'm super glad I did it. If there's anybody who's going to listen to this that's like debating on whether or not they want to race, even if it's 4,500 or like stock class stuff, or you want to race your UTV or whatever, if you haven't done it, I highly recommend you jumping in that program. Just because it's gonna open doors to people that you will never have access to. It's just like a regular dude off the street. Like Wayne Israelson would have never talked to me as just a fucking guy, right? But like, me and Dave are sitting up at the Rookie Ranch thing, and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're talking about, are we going to watch the sunrise or whatever? And he's like, man, I got a really cool speaker tomorrow, and he's like, he's the guy when it comes to shocks. And I'm said, like, you talking about Wayne? And he was like, yeah. And I said, dude, I've read everything Wayne's ever written on the internet. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, man, like he's Izzy on Pirate, and he's this on this and whatever. I said, yeah, like I just searched his name. I've read everything Wayne's ever said online. And he was like, you psychopath. And I'm like, dude, yeah, if Wayne says something like 40 pages deep in a thread, I see what he says, and then I go figure out the context of why he said it or like what it means. And like, dude, every car I've built has been based off of like his ideology. Like what I was talking about earlier when, we're talking about like going fast because we have limited opportunities to go wheeling. At the time in 15, like my friends' rigs were 300 over 400 spring rates. And I'm like 125 over 175 in the front and like 100 over 100 in the rear. And they're all like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, man, this is the way. Like this guy Wayne on the internet says this is how this shit should be. And he seems like a knowledgeable fella. So I'm going to go with it. And then, we go wheeling, and it's like, you're at Harlan and we're leaving the Putney side. And it's like, let's go hit Lion's Den. And, I get there a half hour before everybody else. And they're like, hey, man, like, you should slow down. Like, what the shit? And I'm like, y'all should learn how to go faster. Like, get those 400-pound springs out of your car and, like, let's rip,
Okay,
And
now we're going to have to punch the brakes here and go into some class because I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So you're going to have to school me on that because I approached this from a crawling kind of little bit of go fast background, and on the rear of mine I'm running 140 over 225, leaning heavily into the 225 with the preload to help to keep the stability in the chassis. So running such a light spring rate to me does not compute. Like, we've got a short circuit going on.
Okay. All right. So I'm not going to tell you anything that I came up with. I'm going to regurgitate 100% of shit I read from Wayne offline. Okay. But here's his line. You want the lightest spring to do the heaviest job. So whatever that is, all you're trying to do with the spring rate is hold up the weight of the car, and then you're going to accomplish everything else with valving. Yeah, so like that's
a very dirt bike way of thinking too.
Yeah, well,
that's how we set up front shocks too.
He's a dirt bike guy, so that definitely makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, at a time when like my group of wheeling friends were running super heavy spring rates, I was like on the absolute far end of the spectrum, like as light as I could go. And what's kind of funny about that is like how sort of all the cars that I worked on, I set up that way. And then the cars that I didn't work on, but that wheel with us, sort of gravitated that direction. But I ended up 100 over 100 ended up being like a hair too light in the back on the TJ. When it was all said and done, I think I had 100 over 150. How
heavy was the TJ? Just to get a rough idea.
I never put it on the scales. I don't know. I don't think it was super heavy. I mean, it was front half, back half. I chopped it and tubed out the front and the rear. It was the LS 700 R4 Atlas. I I only had like a 15-gallon cell in it. So
I'm gonna ballpark that at like 45.
I would say
Really?
4. So
Really?
we rolled the race car across the scales in tech, and it's all 2-inch basically. The lower end of it is 188 wall. The lightest tube I got in it's 120 wall. Running a 32-gallon cell, 7 pounds a gallon of fuel. We rolled tech race prepped, full of fuel, like up the fill neck, spares, tools, everything, and the car was 5180, which surprised me.
That's fucking nuts,
Dude,
dude.
I was guessing I was gonna be between 55 and 6,000. So, when we rolled 5180, like full race weight, I was like, damn, okay, that's sweet. She's not as heavy as I thought she was.
Just for some perspective here, no driver, no tools, no spares. My shit box weighs in at 52.
Okay, all right.
So, like, that's fucking wild that a fully equipped 4400 with all 2-inch is lighter than that thing.
It
I mean-
surprised me also.
Damn. So
Yeah.
that, I'm gonna guess that's some type of 60 up front with a 14-bolt rear.
Yeah, so I'm running a 09 Super Duty axle up front, and I mean like junkyard LKQ axle, and then a 14 bolt in the rear. The 14 bolt has been shaved. It's got the TMR like 13 bolt kit on it. Truss on top, backbone truss, all of that, and then fun story. First day pre-running, we're like ripping. It's like road 1920 up the race course, and what I think happened was the sway bar arm hooked the fuel cell, and the rear tire should have been out, and it wasn't. And then when I came down, it kind of like knocked it loose, and we end up doing like a 3-roll like at a decent speed. And this is day 1 of pre-running, like not how you write it up as a rookie. Like, yeah, I'm gonna get in the car with my co-driver, and we're gonna go out, and like an hour into this thing, I'm gonna wad the car up. So that turned into we were fortunate that the Nacho Light guy, I think his name is Steve, happened to be across the canyon from us, sees this happen. We're like fully upside down. He comes over with some of the people that he's with. They get us winched back over. We look at the car. The car's relatively unhurt. I mean, like, a couple scratches on the driver's side skin. The roof is dented in a little bit. But like for the most part, the car did exactly what it was supposed to do. Like everything, like it handled it like a champ. And we looked at it, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this is cool. We're good to go. And we take back off, and Chris Ray, my co-driver, is like, hey, do you want to hit this desert section? And I'm like, yeah. And then I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Maybe we shouldn't go out here and see if we can't hit 100 in the desert on a car we just rolled. So I end up telling them, like, I think let's just nurse it back to the pits. We'll look the car over real good and then go back out. And we made it about 5 miles from where we rolled. And I think the both of the spindles on the rear axle were bent, and it caused the bearings on the driver's side to seize. And 5 miles of that, the hub, wheel, brake, tire, everything goes Bluetooth mode. It straight splits the spindle. I mean, like just peels it open. And just I have a plow now, like axle in the dirt. We're stuck in the high desert, and it's like, shit, what now? So we end up walking up the trail, and we go like 100 yards, and this just random kid is walking down the trail, and he's like, hey, can y'all help me? We're like, what you need, man? And he's like, we rolled over up here in the ditch. Can you flip us back over? And I'm like, nah, dude, we're broke too. So this guy is like girlfriend or wife or I don't know what. Took a horrific line and ended up on his lid in a side by side. So we all go walking for help because we're in a part of the desert that has no cell phone service. And lo and behold, this group of people that had just helped us roll over comes riding back by, and you can just see the looks of like, shit, not this again. And so we have to coerce them into coming back and helping us again. And there's a video out where like Steve ends up underneath my my spare tire carrier on the back with the front of his car, and like his winches run through my roll cage down, and we've ratchet strapped up the axle, and he just put it in neutral, and I like drug him all the way to pit 2, where some of my guys met us with my truck and a trailer that we had borrowed to haul us back to town. So at that point, I'm kind of thinking we're done, like this is that. Well, that's it. We showed up, we pre-ran for a little bit, and then now our race is over. And on the way back, Chris Ray is probably like one of the top co-drivers in Ultra 4. So like this dude's been around the block. I think he's one of the only, if not the only guy that's got a finish in every class of hammers. Yeah, he was, he worked for Hammer King at one point, was like the tech inspector. Dude has like been around the block for sure. And he does these like wrong seat Wednesday, like pro co-driver tech tip kind of things. And I started following him from, it's like a co-drivers anonymous group on Facebook, and like that guy was for sure revered as being, an expert among the group. So I just like Instagrammed him. I hit him up and I'm like, "Hey, bro, are you co-driving for anybody in 4400?" And he was like, "Nope." And I was like, "Well, do you want to?" And he's like, "Well." He doesn't respond for a couple of days, and I'm thinking, well, I guess the answer to that question is no, right? Finally, he comes back and he's like, "Hey, dude, like, sorry, I like left you on read for a couple of days. I was Facebook stalking you, and like Instagram stalking you. Like, it looks like you got the right parts in the right places. It looks like you got a safe car. Like, your chassis looks great. I'm down." So,
oh shit,
that's how I ended up with like one of the premier navigators in Ultra 4 in the car. And it was funny. We were down at a friend's tent one night, helping him work on his stuff. And one of the guys that was there works for the Gomez brothers. And they're just like, we walk into a conversation about co-drivers. And this guy's like, there's only like, 4 legit ass premium co-drivers in Ultra 4. You've got Sergio at Gomez, and you've got Jason Berger that rides with Jason Shear, and I don't remember who else he named. He goes, "You got Chris Ray," and my buddy Matt that we were there with. He's like, "Hey, bro, like, yeah, that's him." And he's like, "Huh?" He's like, "What?" He's like, "He's riding with him." And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, like Chris Ray's riding with him." And he's like, "Get the fuck out of town! Like, how'd you get him in the car?" And I said, "Well, I asked," and he said, "Yeah." And he's like, "No shit." So the night before the 4400 race, we had gone down and asked the Team Indiana, like Brannick dudes, if they would, if we could pit with them in remote pit 1 and 2, because that's a super professional outfit. Like those guys, the year beforehand, when I didn't finish the car, I had still gone out to help another rookie buddy, Brent Moffitt, and he was hooked up with Team Indiana. And like, it was crazy, the professionalism. Like the night before the races, they've got their big whiteboard. I mean, it's like, who the driver is, who the co-driver is, what your radio frequencies are, like what size your lug nut sockets are. I mean, just like it's thorough, and they really know what's up. So I had to go and kind of beg them to see if they'd let me pit with them. And the guy's asking me, he's like, "All right, what's your what's your name? And I tell him, and he's like, who's your co-driver? And I was like, Chris Ray. And he turns around and he was like, the Chris Ray? And I was like, yeah. He's like, how the fuck did you get him in the car with you? I was like, well, I asked him, he said yes.
See, that's what. Quick thing about you DMing him though, it's one of those where your buddies are sitting there and you're drinking. He's like, worst thing he could say is no. But in reality, he could have stalked your Facebook and been like, man, I ain't getting in that piece of shit. That thing is hacked. You know what I mean? So you kind of took a chance. Like he could have.
So I know I've rabbit trailed bad. I have a hard time with that.
Oh no, that's a par for the course here.
It's funny. So my race number is 4,400. And even him, when I asked him, he's like, what's your car number? I'm like, 4,400. He was like, no, I know you're racing 4,400. Like, what's your car number? I was like, 4,400. He was like, no, you don't understand. And then I get into this Team Indiana meeting, and Brant, the guy that's running it, he's like, all right, what's your car number? And I was like, 4,400. He was like, no, everybody's 4,400, dude. Like, what's your car number? I'm like, it's 4,400. He was like, you stupid rookie, what is your car number? And I'm like, my car number is 4,400. And he's like, could somebody, does this kid speak English? Like,
starts talking slower to you.
Like, what is your car number? And I'm like, it's 4,400. And then there's a dude in there, Nate, that I was friends with last year because I helped pit with them last year. And we were in remote pit 2 together. And he's like, nah, dude, his race car number is 4,400. And he's like, how the fuck did you get that number? And I'm like, I asked. Said, yes. And they're like, huh, no way. Like, you got 4,400 as a car number and you've got Chris Ray as a co-driver. He's like, this is like, we're living in the twilight zone right now. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I'm new here. I'm just asking until somebody tells me I can't do that,
So normally, are most people 3-digit? Is that why it's kind of a
no? It's always 4, but it's not.
It's the class number. Just like.
Yeah. No, I understand
funny.
that's the.
It's just surprising that wasn't already for the explanation.
I understand that, but I was just curious because, like, with dirt biking and like dirt bike racing, it's usually 3-digit is max. So I didn't know if it was something similar. That's all.
Well, cars are bigger and they have 4 wheels. So
okay, shut the fuck up. Thank
numbers.
you.
4 wheels, 4 numbers.
Fucking Christ. Oh, then what's up with 2 wheels and 3 numbers, huh?
I don't know. Maybe you're riding trikes. You got something you're not telling us.
No, those things are dangerous. Fuck that.
I think a lot of people thought that it was like retired, or like they just wouldn't let you have it. Like, like there's no way that
nobody would try that because somebody's obviously already taken it, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. I thought Double Law. When I was trying to think of like a race team name, like Snake Eyes or Double Law or whatever. I thought 00 sounds pretty cool, and they're like, you can be 4,400, and I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool too. I'll just do that.
On that note, though,
yeah,
it's always the first 2 numbers of the class, and then the last 2 are the car number in said class, right?
So it doesn't have to be that way. Like there's 4,400 cars that are like 3-digit numbers or 2-digit numbers or whatever. Like it doesn't. It's not like a rule that it has to be that way. But a lot of 4,400 cars are like 4417 or 4444 or whatever. So I think it's easier when you look at a car and it's like a 44 something or a 48 something or a 46, you're like, okay, I know what class that car is racing in. Whereas like the TMR guys run like 867. And like, okay, well, are they, is that modified or stock or, 4,400 or, I don't know. I don't know what 870-67 is. It's 4,400, but, you can't just like instantly tell that from the car number.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because, like, now we're going to turn back the Wayback Machine here and go back to the Petty Cash Cherokee days. And, like, the explanation then was that it was always the car prefix number and then the number of the car in that class, which was random. Like, you could pick the last 2 numbers if they weren't taken. I didn't know if that had changed.
No, I think it's, like, that's common. I just don't think it's like a rule. Like, now there's enough cars and enough people racing where, I probably think between 44 $4,400 and $4,499, like they're all taken. So they're having to get out of the box a little bit on assigning numbers, because like as a driver, you basically own your number. If you've raced it in the last year or two, I think like it belongs to you, and if somebody else wants it, like you have to sign away the rights to that number, like it's yours. So I'm sure there's some people who like aren't giving up their numbers, even if it's been a minute since they raced. So maybe that's what's driving it. But there's definitely more cars out there that have two digit and 3 digit numbers that don't start with their class than I think there used to be.
Makes sense. I'm kind of surprised that they're not moving to like a 44389 type of a situation just to keep that, because that or not infinitely, but that expands it by what, a factor of tenfold.
Yeah.
So you stop running into some of those issues.
Sure.
But
it's still wild to think how few of people have raced King of the Hammers in 4,400. Like, we sort of, after the race was over, we're talking about like the fraternity of people who've done this. Like, it's still pretty damn small, right? Like, most of the people, I think there's like 122 cars this year in 4,400, and out of the 122, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I would guess 80 or 90 of those people have done it every year for the last 10 or 15 years. So like it's still a relatively small group of people who've ever taken the green flag at King of the Hammers, in the 4,400 class or any class really. And it's kind of a wild thing to think about. There was a post on Rock Sports Insiders the other day that like there's been fewer kings than there have been men on the moon. And I don't know if that's true or not. Just somebody posted that shit and I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy to think about.
Damn.
yeah,
I wonder if that's true, because that would be a fucking wild statistic.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
I hope it's true. Whether it's true or not, I'm gonna keep on keeping on like it's facts.
Now, if you ever have any buddies who are looking to try to get a number and they can't, find one that they like, something that we used to do with the dirt bike racing was going to 10 codes that police use, and like 1051 was one that my buddy picked because it was subject is drunk, and like different things like that, and like like police chase or like whatever. And sometimes it's always a fun thing. We're like, oh, how'd you choose that? And it's like, well, police 10 code is like subject is speeding or something like something like that. It was always a funny little caveat.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So now let's dive into tires a little bit. You right? You talked about having blue.
Sorry,
label.
I gotta interject. There have been 12 people who have walked on the moon. 24 people who have went to the moon, but not all of them walked on it.
Oh.
And how many kings do we have?
I don't know.
I mean, it's been going on since 2007. I don't think they did it in 8. And then
What
obviously.
What classifies them as a king? Is that just a win, or do they have to like have like a specific amount of wins? Like, what's the?
If you win the 4,400 race, you're the king. So, there's
definitely a chance that is accurate.
Yeah.
If somebody's won multiple times in a row or whatever,
Shannon Campbell's
or just multiple times in general.
Times. Lauren Healy's done it a couple of times. Jason Shear's done it a couple of times. Raul Gomez has done it twice, I think. So I think Randy Slauson's done it twice. Eric Miller, I'm pretty sure, is 2. So yeah, I mean, it's only been going on since 2007, and in that time period, you pretty much had like a handful of people do it multiple times. So there's probably not 7 or 8 kings total if I had to guess.
Holy shit!
There's a list, but you got to get rid of the duplicates here. I'll do that. Cody, ask your question.
No, but thank you for interjecting. That was honestly a great time for it. So thank you for that, because otherwise we would have trailed off and probably never came back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So tallying it up right now, 12.
Damn.
And how many was on the moon? How many walked on the moon?
12. So it's equal. I'm
rarefied air. So I
Wow.
think it's only fitting if I wreck the stat by becoming the 13th king next year.
I agree.
I mean, also
perfect.
that's just a cool number to be like, yeah, I was the 13th king.
We only probably need an act of God, and like 4 or 5 miracles to make
Maybe
that
an
happen.
angel titty or two.
Dude, I'm down, like any way it happens, I'm cool with. Like we can sprinkle the car with holy water, or if you got some like anointing oil, or like whatever needs to happen to get on the box. I'm pretty much down with. But yeah, I don't know. I think we got a long way to go before we're pushing for podiums. If we ever get to be that competitive, it's wild in 4400 now when you're talking about. I'm just a regular dude, like I built this car in the back of my cabinet shop with my friends. We're not professionals. Like none of us build cars professionally. I don't have a 10-person full-time staff of guys that, professional car builders. My social media team consists of me when I think about, taking a picture or posting a video. Whereas like some of these guys got 6 full-time dudes that are doing that, and they're running $1 million a year race teams and driving upwards of 700,000 to $1 million cars.
Speaking of that, actually, how do you feel about Ford having their hand
There's
in
been
the
10.
stock class?
I mean, so like the rule book talks about like stock class is the place for manufacturers to showcase their wares, right? So I think overall for the sport, it's good that a major car manufacturer cares enough to be involved. Really, I think it sucks. What I would love to have is like a Ford versus Ferrari situation, kind of thing where like somebody at Jeep gets pissed off and somebody at Toyota gets pissed off, and like they decide they want to just battle it out in the desert, Ultra Ford style, and they all start throwing money at it. I think that would be, cool as shit. I mean, can you imagine like somebody in a portaled Forerunner, and then you've got like a Gladiator or something that's a 392 that's got factory support, and I like it would be exciting. And I think you can't. It's not even a debate that Ultra 4 has upped the off-road game across the board. I mean, in 2015, nobody you knew was running 40 spline chromoly axles, right? And then like
Yep.
now half your friend group's got them.
Yep.
So I think from like a off-road enthusiast standpoint, like bringing the whole game up, it only benefits all of us if more manufacturers get in the game. And I understand it sucks if you're in like a Suzuki Samurai and some dude with $50,000 worth of portals comes blowing past you in his Bronco.
What would you think about moving the manufacturers up out of stock class and moving them to like modified or the 4500 series?
Are you talking about giving them their own class, or like moving them into a more modified class? I don't know. I think it would be scary if you said, okay, now we're going to let a Ford backed Bronco be in 4,500 when they can start modifying chassis and they can run multiple shocks a corner and they can upgrade power plants and all that. Like there's still going to be a disparity there because they're just going to outspend everybody.
Yeah.
And
That was my argument with them being in stock class, though, is it, in my opinion, now this is just my opinion, it raises the competition shelf in stock class when you're able to have specific vehicles that are almost built or tailor built towards it, because like you were talking about earlier with Jeep, if they wanted to dip their toes in with a 392, how the hell are you supposed to compete with a 392 if you're limited to a 22 RE, or maybe if you're getting aggressive a 3.4?
yeah, it'd be hard. I mean, it would be difficult. The thing about the thing about Ultra 4 in general and King of the Hammers is like, okay, you've got these cars that people have spent, in 4,400, like $1 million on. But at some point, you get so out in the weeds on one-off custom everything, and like you're so on the cutting edge of technology that like, how many times have those cars finished? You know what I mean? Like when I set out to build a car, I'm like, man, I want to build. I say, this was my goal. This is like also necessity because I don't have the budget to go, ham and spend $1 million on a car. But like, I want an endurance car or a reliability car. Like, there's a bunch of cars out there that are north of 1,000 horsepower, but like, can you keep 1,000 horsepower together for 300 miles? And if you look at statistically, the answer is like, no. It's hard for parts to live under 1,000 horsepower for a super long period of time. So I think there's ways to like get around some of that stuff, like people who are out horsepowering you or whatever. Like, you could build arguably a suspension that's good enough with a smaller motor to outperform the big stuff, and then the huge part of it is like, can you keep it together? And like, I think I've heard that Horschel car, it's like IFS, IRS. It's like 1,000 rear wheel horsepower. That car's sick, and it's a work of art. But like, it's so intricate. He's had a hard time keeping it together. And like, my goal was, I'm going to build something that hopefully will survive. But I don't think I need 1,000 rear wheel horsepower to be competitive. I just need a car that is still kicking after 300 miles.
Now, do you think that scales with the classes, or does that pertain more into the 4,400?
I think it scales with classes, and then also too, like, in stock class, you got to think about like what you're picking as a vehicle to start with, right? Like, if you pick a 80s Suzuki Samurai, well, those came with small motors. They're leaf sprung. Like, you've limited yourself by what you started with. Before the Broncos got in the game, I always thought, man, it'd be badass if you got like a SS Trailblazer. It's already got it. It's already got an LS motor in it, so like you can out horsepower most everybody. Like, suspension wise, you're already like IFS. Like, you could do some wild stuff with that. Like, I think it's hard to like take a knife to a gunfight and then complain that like, well, I can't believe some people showed up with guns, like, that's not the spirit of the class. It's like, well, if you wanted to win, like, show up with a damn gun,
Fair. I don't know. To me, it ends up rubbing me the wrong way with Ford running in the lower classes, but that's just, like I said, my opinion.
Yeah. And I mean, dude, it's like, that's a marketing, like, that's their marketing arm. Like, and two, it's hard to hate on Ford because they have invested a whole lot in the sport. And then as like a manufacturer, I know that those cars were born out of the desert. Like, they have a whole testing facility down there. Ford does. And I actually, because AK with the Bronco is connected with the Funhaber guys, when I broke my car and had to have parts shipped, they were letting me ship them to their shop. And it's like, hey, don't tell anybody where this is, kind of thing, like super secret location. But they got a whole testing facility out there. And I know that they hire like Jason Shear and obviously Von Gittin Jr. and Lauren Healy and Brad Lovell and some of those guys. Like, they bring in legitimate hardcore Ultra 4 racers and are like, tell us what this thing needs to do. And I got some respect for that. Like, it's not like they just, some nerd in Michigan, drew a car in AutoCAD and they built it, and it's, some plastic piece of shit, and they put it out on the market and want to call it an off-road vehicle. those guys actually took it out in the desert and beat the snot out of it, and then listened to those dudes when they were like, hey, "This is what you got to change on it." And I wish more manufacturers would do that. Like why does Jeep not have a V8 1-ton option? Like they already produce 60s and 80s and stuff in like the 2500 and 3500 trucks. Like, why can you not go down to your local dealership and pick up like a 392 with 1-tons under it? Like, that should exist.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like,
even an eco diesel with 1-ton axles would be sick.
Or a manual.
Yeah.
Let's start small.
Yeah.
How about a manual behind your diesel?
Yeah. But like, say they put that thing out in like 2024, by like 2038, I'm sure I could find one in the junkyard at LKQ that I could fix up real nice,
Mm-hmm.
If they never build it, I'll never have the opportunity.
Nope.
I wonder if that leads into like why like Dodge did the Demon or like Chevy did the Copo Camaro. I wonder if there was some racing program that they were into and why they even went to those crazy extremes to be able to be in a stock format class or something. I don't know.
That's a great question.
While we're in this lull, there have been 9 unique King of Hammers Kings.
Okay.
So there has been
the list is pretty small.
The list that I was looking at was fastest time. My bad. That does include 4,800 people and other classes.
There you go.
Yeah. You can see the leaderboard, but it's got multiple names, and a lot of them have very similar names, or they're all right next to each other, so you kind of have to like squint at it. I just deleted them out of the list and made a new one. So yeah, 9. That's wild.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, there's only 2 times that Ford has won. Put in perspective, Luke. Because Lauren Healy,
you're not changing my opinion. My opinion is going to stay the same.
I understand to a certain degree, because if you think about it in the sense of like F1, there's no. I mean, I don't even know this for exact fact, but how many private drivers are driving F1? Probably none that aren't backed by a fucking proper dealer or a car manufacturer. So if you start taking that, you mentioned the whole Ford versus Ferrari thing, and if you apply that to this, then it's just going to edge out the competition even further for that class. So I do mildly respect it, but I also can understand the fact of using it for marketing, and then also for the simple fact of like we were talking about the Copo Camaro and the Dodge Demon is like if there's a market for it and they find a reason that it's worth selling that vehicle at stock, then it's going to raise, the competition, but also that's now offered to the general public. And how fucking sick would it be seeing somebody driving down the street in a Gladiator on 60s from factory on 40s with a fucking Demon motor or something in it? That's
I don't
fucking
want it as a 60. I don't want it.
Shut the fuck up. As an example, all right, you bitch. God dang it.
I can completely agree with that, and I like it's a double-edged sword. My opinion only applies to stock because I love watching what Ford is doing in the other classes. Like, they have some fast as fuck and cool as fuck cars.
Yeah.
So, my opinion is strictly just
dumb. But
yeah,
we'll let you have it.
Yeah, well, we all hold a dumb opinion or two. I hold more than 2.
I've got one.
I like the capacity on that bad boy. How many dumb ideas can you hold in that brain?
Well, I like AKs and manuals, so I'm pretty retarded.
I don't think those are dumb, so I guess I'm equally in the hole there.
The answer is yes.
Anyways, I am curious about Cody's question involving tires there, because that's going to be a zesty one.
So you mentioned, that you have KR3s and that you have fucking blue labels. Now, give me your honest opinion about blue labels, because I've never heard somebody give like a happy review. And just from your perspective, I'm going to ask my other tire question here in a second, but let's start with this one. Like, how new are those blue labels?
So they're pretty old. Like they're pretty old, but they don't have a lot of miles on them. So where I live in Greenville, South Carolina, Jackson Motorsports is based out of here. And if you don't know, Jackson Motorsports handles all of BFG's racing programs. So like if you're running like I don't know, Road Atlanta type stuff or like car racing type stuff, all those tires are housed like 12 minutes from my shop. And they have an enormous facility. It's super badass. And they're mainly, I guess, a marketing company. But then they handle all of this, race tire stuff for Michelin and BFG. So one of my childhood friends, like a dude I've been buddies with since like sixth grade, is works over there. I don't even know what his job title is. I think he's pretty big dick over there, but because my buddy works there and I know it exists and it's right here in town, I'm a nobody, but he was able to get me hooked up like with their racer program. So that's kind of how I got the in over there. And BFG does do a lot for their racers as far as like pit support and that kind of stuff. But then also being local to them, like, when I buy tires and they come through Jackson, like I can go over there and drop off my wheels and they'll mount and balance them. So, we were talking about how bad, beadlocks suck. It sucks a lot less when you just like drop them off and then they call you the next day and are like, "Hey, you can come pick your stuff up." So that's sort of how like that whole thing worked out. And then I will say like this year, I would not have made the green flag without like BFG's support. And I'm not a factory sponsored racer. They're not giving me tires or anything like that. I wish, and if I think Nate Hunt's the dude who decides that. And Nate, if you ever hear this, buddy, like I'm ready.
Hit him up.
I'm ready. Hey, bro, I'm ready. You can just send me, 20 free tires tomorrow. I'm doing a killer job of marketing. Can't you tell? But no, I mean, not like a pitch or whatever. Like I'm not a big brand guy or anything. And if you go and look at my stuff, I'm running those tires and I never posted anything really about them. I never tagged BFG in any of the stuff until I got to Hammers. And when I wrecked the car and broke, those guys were like, whatever you need, like we're in for it. Cole Connor, Matt, Hobie, Frankie, all those dudes, like they came to my tent and worked on my car with me every night. When it was time to weld new spindles on the car, we ended up
Fucking nuts that you welded new spindles on.
dude. So like that's a wild story. I think my race is over and we go walking around trying to talk to people and figure out like, can anybody help? Like, is there an axle? Does somebody have spindles? We talked to Yukon. They're like, we don't keep that stuff. And we went all around and then I walked back to my garage space and I had bought Brannick 1550 U joints and Brannick shafts from East Coast Gear Supply the week before we left. And it just so happened that the dude I talked to on the phone, his name is John, was like, "Oh, you're going to Hammers? Like, I'm co-driving a 4800 car. Like, where do you know where your garage in?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in VP 100." And he goes, "Oh, I'm right around the corner from you on Buggy Whips Way." And I'm like, "Okay, sweet." He's like, "I'll swing by and say hey one day." So I wrecked the car. I pretty much think that my race is done. We go walk around trying to, beg, borrow, steal parts and really kind of come up empty. And when I walk back to my garage, standing around the broke ass car is three dudes. And he's like, "Are you Zach?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, I'm John from East Coast Gear Supply." And I'm like, "Oh, what's up, man?" And he's like, I see you've had a problem." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, so don't freak out, but like, I have everything you need to fix this at the warehouse." And then it was just a matter of like, well, how fast can we get it here? And those are the parts that we overnighted to the Ford garage. But they sent me out everything that I needed to like totally rebuild that axle in the desert. And yeah, dude, like we're like portaband cutting off spindles. Like it was more than I really thought I would get into, on the lake bed. But the BFG guys are like, hey man, we got welders, we got, all this stuff. So we ended up pulling the axle out of the car. We took it over to BFG. They pull out, their welders and all their equipment. We get everything, ground down and fit up and cut off and ready to go, and burn in new spindles at, I don't know, 1:00 in the morning on the lake bed. And, like without those dudes, like it would have never happened, we did not take a welder out there. We never imagined we'd be doing that level of fab work, on the lake bed. So we didn't take, the stuff to do it. And like, not only were they like, you can use our crap, they were like right there with us the whole way. So like straight up, if it wasn't for those guys, Cole especially, I don't know that we would have made it. So like, I'm super thankful for that. Like, that's one of those things that like, okay, I had to buy tires, and that was no small chunk of change, but they also mounted them up for me, and that was sweet. And then when I really needed the help, like they worked their asses off for me to make sure I'd make the race. So that kind of made me, that made me a believer, right? Like in the program, no matter what you believe about the tire, it's hard to like,
Yeah, I can't knock that. And I
yeah,
don't-
like, am I going to get that support from anybody else? I probably not.
That's pretty cool.
I don't have a spindle I can give you, unfortunately.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
I am also I'm not on the lake bed, so even if I
It would
did,
be a
I
lot
wouldn't be any
cooler
help.
if you were.
I know. You don't have to tell me that.
Dude, that's just wild though. Like, I have my gripes with BFG, and like as you can tell at this point, I have gripes about everything.
Yeah,
But I
it's
will
grumpy.
say that they make some kick-ass race tires. I'm a big fan of the KR2 and KR3 in a racing application.
Yeah, that KR3 is thick. I wasn't sure what to expect because I've never done the desert racing stuff high speed, but I have run a bunch of different stickies in the rocks, and dude, like a 40 it's funny. I'm like, damn, look at these small ass tires, because everything that I've run here in the rememberable past is like 42 and up type stuff, and everybody that I wheel with is on SXs or preps or 42-inch reds or whatever. And I'm like, man, these tires are small as shit. And then we got in the rocks and was like, damn, these things hook. So, I didn't have any complaints. I didn't get to run as many rock trails as I was hoping to, before we ventilated our motor. But the rocks that I did get to hit in it, I was like, yeah, this dog will hunt.
Now, usually my question is what is your favorite DOT off-road tire, and then what is the worst? But as you kind of just said, you're not really too partial. So I mean, I think I'm just gonna leave my question at the whole Blue Label conversation, because I think you did a really good job of selling BFG to the people. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, and I'm not a DOT tire kind of fella. I mean,
No, I get it, but most people come from humble beginnings, where they start out with something small, and it's nice for people who are ever
man,
looking for tires and something to.
You gotta man up and just max that credit card out. Like, there's no room for small tire hard compounds in the rocks. Like, you $20 is $20 if you need to hit up some truck stops or like get a feet finder account or whatever. You got to get on them sticky tires.
Hey, that's a good way of putting
I
it.
can't fault it. I do have a nitpick question for you because I'm like autistic and go down rabbit holes. And one of the
Bring it.
tires I have always wanted to try is the KR2. I believe the S is the designation for the stickies. How do those things do?
So I'm running the SR. the SR has a little bit like more enhanced tread pattern. I guess there's like, I don't know if it's another ply or they put something in it, but it's supposed to be built more for like hitting shit at speed.
What was
So
that? I'm sorry. What
it's
was
the
the
SR.
SR? Okay.
Yeah, so there's the S and then there's the SR. And actually my my spares, I've got a set of 5 spares and they're just S's. They're not the SR. And like no complaints out of them. Truthfully I didn't see any difference between the way they hooked in the rocks versus the way the SRs do. I think it's a pretty much the same tire, just they do a little bit more with like tread protection for like
Yeah,
the high.
you know the ones that I'm talking about. They look like a crawler, but they're
Yeah.
a stiffer carcass. I really would love to try a set of those. I have no desire to touch reds. They just
Okay.
they don't really interest me because of how floppy they are.
Yeah.
Like as far as the carcass goes, and like I said, I like driving my shit fast. So right now
Yeah,
I'm rocking a
I've
set
never
of
I've never owned a set of reds, but I've wheeled with a lot of set of reds, and like dry rocks. I mean, Jesus Christ, those things hook like
they're
unbelievable,
nuts.
and it's like the more worn out they are, it seems like the better they
better
do.
they
Oh yeah,
are.
I've got a set of reds for context here, and
Okay.
they're like every other set of reds that's worth anything is they're bald as shit and they look like crap. I
And I
went
bet
to
they go
AOP
everywhere.
pretty much, and
Yeah.
honestly, like they do still hold up in wet rock. They don't hold up if there's no rocks to be seen.
Gotcha.
You got to bump it a little more because you have no tread. But if there's any rocks whatsoever, it could be a pebble on the trail, or like a smaller rock or whatever. It'll go up it, and it'll grab that, and that will be the traction you get. But they definitely have their pros and cons.
For East
everything
Coast
else.
wheeling, I probably lean towards like SXs. Just because like you get some sloppy, nasty stuff, and they just seem to like clean out and hook, right?
Yep.
So like of all the tires, I would say like East Coast, I think SX is probably the play, but like the more you go out west, like it's like video game traction, right? Like, the first time that we went to Moab, I'm looking at stuff and I'm like, man, if this shit was in Tennessee or Kentucky, 0% chance. You'd have to hit it at 90 miles an hour and just like pray
Hope
that
for the
Jesus,
best.
pray that like just Jesus took the wheel, right? And then, but you're like, there is a burnt in just rubber track up this thing that clearly many people have gone up. And then you start going and you're like, damn, it's like driving on sandpaper. Like, this is cheating. So I think the conversation changes, based off of like what part of the country you're in.
Oh yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, because like I'm gonna wreck wheel the shit out of this Ultra 4 car. Like you will
Like at
find
the Web
me.
Wheelers Ball.
Oh yeah, dude. Like you'll
Yeah.
find me at AOP and Windrock and Harlan and all these places. Like I purposefully built my spare tire carrier so that it can come off and a cooler can go on. My wife's only request when I was doing this car was like, don't put a radiator behind my head with like a fan screaming the whole time. Like I want to enjoy it when we go on a wreck wheeling trip kind of thing. So like, we're going to find out how these KR3s do, on East Coast wreck wheeling. So I'm sure you'll find me at 3:00 in the morning somewhere banging rev limiter, trying to hit, some big obstacle on something. And I'll
So
let
I
you know
know
how
that
it goes.
they're very popular with the F&F crowd. There have been a lot of people that have ran KR3s at F&F and love them.
Okay.
So
I may
that's
not know what FNF it is, to be fair. Just saying.
Field and Forest Off-Road Park.
It's
Or
a
Off-road
campground.
camping area. Sorry.
And,
Sorry,
and
Bob. Please don't
what
murder
state
me.
is this in?
New
Where are we
Hampshire.
at?
Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Okay. Yeah,
Um,
not a lot of South Carolina, guys are making it to Wheeling, New Hampshire.
At this place, they
Completely
do.
understandable.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, we may have to check that out too. I got some friends that live up that way, so maybe we'll have to go see what New Hampshire Wheeling's all about.
You should.
Oh, Richie's here? First
Yeah.
time talking the whole episode, you little fucker.
I've talked.
He did say at least one sentence.
He said
Oh, I'm proud of you.
probably 5. We're doing good this episode. Sorry, running joke is that Richie never talks. Because,
He's
Richie.
a wallflower.
Yeah, sometimes he'll just randomly pop in, but he talked about Eric Miller and the trip to Roush, so that was there.
Well, to be fair, you talked and he agreed and chimed in. But
Fair enough.
anyways, continue. Where were we?
We were talking about stickies. Other question, just out of my own morbid curiosity, how was Team Maxis doing out there? And also
great.
Team Mickey.
Great question. All right, so everybody that I know that's running the Mickey tires is like they've drank the Kool-Aid. They're all about it.
Oh yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
I think it's great that like Mickey seems to be coming on pretty strong and like they're very active. Their participation level in Ultra 4 seems to be super high. So I think that's cool. kind of like the whole car manufacturer thing. I hope that encourages the tire manufacturers to get more involved. I don't think anybody wants to get like dominated, and when you start seeing a bunch of Mickeys on the box, it's probably going to make the rest of them want to up their game some. So
Not general grabbers. They'll still be doing advertisement for fucking boats. Stupid bastards. I don't understand it to this day. Sorry.
So the part of the reason I asked that is, like you said, I drank the Kool-Aid. I fucking love them. They've been nothing but a good tire for me, and I was just kind of curious if they're like building a race pedigree, and
they're super aggressive right now, like putting together like legitimate race teams on their tires. Like I know Doc Jones that won the 4800 race last year. He's on Mickey's, and when I've talked to him, everything he's had to say about them is fantastic. My buddy Chuck Crossland in 4800 is on those. He loves them. Brent Moffitt in 4400 is on them, and he's all about that. I haven't heard anybody who's running them say anything negative about them. And I know that there's things at play there, right? Like, they're partnering with their teams and stuff. So they're probably not going to like openly talk shit about the tire, but these are also people that I'm friends with. And I feel like if there was something negative to say, they'd be like, hey, yeah, man, on Instagram, I know I said these things were great, but secretly, I'm not a fan. And I haven't heard anything.
The Patagonia situation.
Yeah, and I'm not my buddy Chuck Crossland, or not Chuck Crossland, Chuck Converse that we talked about earlier. He just took over for Milestar.
I tell you what, in all seriousness, if you would be so kind, would you please get him into contact with us? Because I would love to talk with him
100%.
about
Yeah,
that whole thing.
Respectfully, we have talked so much shit
That's
about
why
those
I want
tires.
to talk to him.
Dude,
he wheels the shit out of them, and they live in Utah. Like they're down in St. George. So they've got like video game traction rocks and stuff to play on, but it doesn't seem like Chuck has any problem hooking up and crawling about any damn thing he puts tires on. So
part of the reason I want to talk with him is they changed the compound, they changed a bunch of other shit, and I believe they also widened the voids. Brandon Carroll's running them, and like Chuck has been fairly active on social media. So like, if they're making changes to make a better product, I will happily support them doing that.
Yeah.
However, the current product, in my mind, fucking sucks.
Gotcha. Well, Chuck's the Wheeler's Wheeler. I know he hasn't been in that role for very long. I think he started with them in like December. I got a feeling like if there's changes that need to be made, he'll definitely be a catalyst for it.
Oh yeah,
I was
think that
I
could
was
be fun.
really excited when he got that position. He took over for Martin. I don't know what Martin's last name is, but I think it's kind of sort of like running the race program type stuff. And I think he's going to be really good at that job, and I think he's going to be really good at like helping, hopefully, steer the direction of the product. So, I mean,
and like I'm
they
here
wheel every
for
weekend. They wheel every weekend. I mean, if it's before when he was just running the tire, I maybe he doesn't have the pull to kind of steer it in any direction. But I would imagine now that not only is he wheeling that tire every weekend, but he's in a position where he's probably got some influence. So I would expect it to get better because of Chuck. But yeah, like I'll absolutely hook you up with him. No doubt. I can text him as soon as we get off of here and tell him like, hey, bro, you got to go on. You got to go on the podcast here and talk tire.
Hell yeah.
Always
Also,
down for that.
real quick shout out because this dude deserves it. Jordan Kruger. This episode's been fucking awesome. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah, Jordan's like, it's funny. We cover a lot of the same territory, right? Like he moved to South Carolina at some point, and I think in his childhood, like we go to a lot of the same places, know a lot of the same people. But we're largely like Instagram acquaintances, like social media people. It's funny how that plays out, but
Yep.
yeah, I'm super glad that he recommended me. This has been fun.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess this is kind of a good time to wrap up. We're over our 2-hour mark now. So, Mr. Savage, where can people find you on all different platforms of social media?
On Instagram, I'm Savage Racing 4400, and I do most of my stuff there. Facebook, just Zach Savage. I've got a YouTube channel that I don't post anything to that I probably should. It's Savage Racing also. So yeah, hit me up. Like we like to have a good time, and we try to post some cool shit, and maybe we'll learn something. If nothing else, you might be entertained.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thank you honestly for coming on. That was a ton of fun. We got to learn a lot of cool things, talk some good tech, and honestly, I've enjoyed every single second of this, and I'm sure the listeners will too. And on that note,
so excited. No, you've been an awesome guest.
Now I'm so.
He could
First off,
it's
stopping. All right, I'm sorry.
I have one. Can I ask one quick question for you?
Man, of course.
What kind of medical do you guys carry in the race cars? Anything?
Yes. So the rules say that we have to carry a medical kit. In mine, I'm basically carrying like a IFAC. Like I've got tourniquets, quick clot, Israeli bandages, that type of stuff. Like my fear would be, we have a bad wreck and something ends up amputated or cut severely. So that's it. The race tracker in the car is super cool. It's looking for high G out events, and then it's also looking for like stop vehicles. And if you experience like a high G out on the tracker, it actually notifies race ops like immediately. So even if you're like unconscious, they'll start sending people to you. The dude's name is Andy McDaniel. He runs Rescue 3 at King of the Hammers. And dude is a straight up badass. He is involved in the Ford programs. He's done all kinds of Baja stuff. Like, dude knows his stuff. And he's like, I'm the guy that you never want to see on race day because like if you see me on race day, like you're having a shitty ass day, and there's probably a helicopter going to be involved. But like, dude, they got it sorted. I mean, like we were ready, to throw a tourniquet on something or throw a chest seal or something like that. And then other than that, dude, I got to go ahead because you parlayed this so well and plugged the shit out of some goodies powders. Because I feel like the Richard Petty of Ultra 4 racing. 2 years ago, we're in Remote Pit 2, and Levi Shirley comes in, and I think his car had thrown a belt or something. He's sitting there for a long time, and we were in the pit right next to him, and he's like, "My head hurts so bad. Does anybody have like an Advil or something?" And I'm like, "Bro, I got a goodies powder," and he's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it's like an Advil." And he's like, "Okay," and I hand it to him. He's like, "What do you do with it?" And I'm like, You just take it," and he rips it open and he looks at it and he was like, "Do I snort this?" I was like, "Nah, bro. Like I wouldn't. You probably could. I would not." And
I
he was
would.
like, "What do I do with it?" He's like, "I'm like, bro, just pour it in your mouth and like swish it around with some water." And anyhow, so he pops this goodies powder. That night after the race is over, I'm walking through the garage area and we happen just to walk past him. And he's like, hey, are you the dude that gave me the goodies? Or he didn't even say the goodies. Like, are you the guy that gave me that shit earlier at Remote Pit 2? And I'm like, yeah, man. He was like, what was that stuff? That's the greatest stuff I've ever had in my life. And I was like, well, that's a goodies powder. And he was like, can you just like get that anywhere? And I was like, yeah, dude, like just gas station, like drugstore, whatever. And he was like, you need like a prescription for that? Or like I felt like he was asking me to buy drugs. And I'm like, nah, bro, you can just get those. And he was like, okay. And then right before Hammers this year, he hit me up on Instagram and had sent me a picture of a box of like mixed berry goodies. And he's like, I'm all ready for Hammers. So then Chris Ray is like doing his wrong seat Wednesday tech tip, and he's talking about how he like grinds up ibuprofen or aspirin and like puts them in the water bottle or whatever. And I'm like, hey, dude, have you ever thought about putting a goodies in there? And he was like, holy shit, yes. Like I absolutely should have done that. So I got him turned back on to goodies this year, and now he's on that goodies train. So like, dude, a good like Cat 5 tourniquet and a couple goodies powders will cure what ails you.
Damn, I gotta look up this goodies powder now. Sounds like a fucking miracle drug.
Dude,
All right.
it's the best.
So, as Cody was saying, we're starting to wrap up. I know you're a dad.
Yeah.
What's your dad advice?
Oh my God. It happens fast, and everybody's gonna tell you it happens fast. And then like you wake up one day and you're like, holy shit, they're all right. Like I'm way too young to have an 11-year-old. Like I tell everybody, there's no way I'm old enough to have an 11-year-old. And then I've got a 10-month-old. And I'm telling you, man, like enjoy it because you blink and, one day they're 10 months and the next day they're in 6th grade and you're trying to work out some stupid math problem and you just wonder how in the hell, it went so fast and where all the time goes. So I'd say my dad advice is just enjoy it because everybody's going to tell you it happens quick. And then one day you wake up and you realize everybody's 100% right.
Hell yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Luke, do you not? That's
I
your
do.
end, or you got
I
some?
was
I was gonna say.
I was just waiting to get cued in. My takeaway from this episode is that time and money are interchangeable when it comes to going fast, but you got to hold on to the time that you have and enjoy it. So, if you want to save some money, you're going to invest a lot of time. Just make sure that that time is not being wasted when it could be better spent elsewhere.
Definitely. And I've been a time guy, man, because like I've had to be a time guy. I mean, I told you earlier, we worked 21-hour days for 14 weeks.
Yeah.
Like I wish I had a boatload of money and I could have paid somebody to do half of that stuff. But the reality was, on our budget, like if we were going to make it, we were going to have to make it with just, hard work and grit. And pulling ourselves up by our boot laces kind of thing. And yeah, you're 100% right there.
Hey,
It's tough.
it is tough, but what can you do besides have a good evening?
Well, I heard a trophy truck guy explain it like this. He said there's type 1 fun and type 2 fun. Type 1 fun is where, like, in the moment you're doing it and you're like, hell yeah, this is awesome. This is the coolest shit I've ever done. And then type 2 fun is the whole time you're doing it, you're like, what in the shit did I get myself into? This is terrible. This sucks. This is miserable. Why am I doing this? And then a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months goes by and you look back and you're like, damn, that shit was awesome. And we didn't get to Texas before I was like, damn, that shit's awesome. But King of the Hammers is for sure the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it was super rewarding. And if you want to learn, like who you are and what you're made of and what you're capable of and that kind of stuff, I highly recommend you do it. Like, there's not a lot of opportunities in life to figure out, what you're made of. And you definitely figure that shit out when you sign up to go race that race.
Hell yeah. And on that note, we're going to end it here. Have a good evening, everyone.